Welcome, JK. Welcome to Signal Quest with BVHK.
Thank you, Harish, for this great invitation.
Yeah. So, as I keep telling all my guests on this podcast, this is like a personal masterclass session for myself, where I, invite some of the smartest, most intellectual, best people that I know, and I just ask questions that I would have otherwise wanted to know about. The last guest on this podcast, who also happens to be a friend and is an economist and teaches, he actually described it as a viva. uh, I hope this doesn't sound like an exam viva for you, but
Exactly.
the objective of this podcast is for me to learn, and then I put it out for others to almost eavesdrop. So the target audience for this podcast is the two of us, you and me. If we happen to have a good time at the end of the podcast, that then the objective of the recording is met. So that's how I treat this podcast.
Fully looking forward to Harish.
Yeah.
I feel a little nervous, but I hope you will make that okay.
So I have some questions lined up for you, and I'll try to go in that sequence that I have. But yeah, based on your answers, I can also go elsewhere. Completely depends on how the conversation flows
Okay.
from here. So let me start with the first question. And like they
Sure.
say, let's start at the very beginning. So you entered your first job on May 7th, 1990 at Murugappa Group.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did that 22-year-old JK think HR was, and how wrong was he?
How wrong was I? Okay.
Yes.
Right. So, Harish, when I joined the Murugappa group, I was just 22, and that was my campus hiring that Murugappa group did at the Madras School of Social Work. And like many young graduates of those days, I should say that I thought possibly it's all about, creating systems, policies, sitting down in an office and, asking people to do this, that, that's the typical thought that was there. And after my initial induction, I should say, I was posted to Nellikupam, which is a remote village. It was a sugar factory in Tamil Nadu. I still remember, the evening that I landed up there in a small rural railway station, uh, being received by a company jeep, the company driver waiting for me at that station. I could easily spot because hardly anybody was there. And then moving into a very, very modest slushy pathway trainee quarters. That's what I would say. And that was my first real lesson. I would say I sort of recognized that organizations are not theories, they are lived realities. That was a moment of realization. Very quickly, I also realized that HR is no more about sitting in a cabin, giving instructions or making policies and things like that. It was actually about being there, being there at the floor, listening to the operators, understanding their grievances, dealing with issues like absenteeism. Basis absenteeism, you realize that to some people you'll have to make home visits, counseling families. Then, of course, there were issues around handling tensions with the union. And in a few months of my joining there, there was even a strike, and that became a real baptism by fire. So looking back, that overall experience completely reshaped, I would say, my understanding of HR. It is definitely very less about policies, and it's far more about people. And like I said, about showing, being with them, and listening out to them, helping resolve difficult human situations, and also, resolving situations with a fairness and with firmness, both of that. So, to your question, Harish, the 22-year-old JK was not entirely wrong, but I can confess that he was definitely incomplete. That for sure.
Right.
So, yeah, so the factory floor, I would say, taught me those initial lessons that it's not just sitting in office, but it's just there in the ground.
Right. So your answer reminds me of what Clayton Christensen, talks about this whole notion of the job to be done. Right.
Okay,
While
okay.
the title or the designation might be something,
Uh,
what you really need to do there is very different. Or what you hire a product or a service for is
mm,
very different from what the stated job description of that product is. So very
precisely.
similar.
Yeah, and it's also about coming into reality beyond what you saw thought as theories, and that's why I said, no, keep saying this. It's not theory; it's about living a reality, and you need to know that reality.
Right, right.
Yeah,
And you joined in 1990. So
that's right.
was there any change post 91 liberalization that you had to sort of grapple with, which you're not prepared for as part of your college education?
Not really. I mean, I think that was a great time because salaries got better. No, otherwise, I mean, I can't believe the kind of salaries that existed even for the apex roles then. And just imagine people like me who started then. It made a significant change post that over the next 2 3 years. I mean, that's my most memorable thing. That I used to wonder, when will I get married? How will I, even if I get married, how do I live? And things got changed very dramatically. Of course, that was also an era of, the computerization catching up more faster. Some of us joined then, sort of worked with, what is that, the word star. And that was very nice time. That's
Yeah.
good change, it
Mm.
was a very nice, welcome change.
North Star, Lotus, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. And did you face any challenges with language as well? Because you worked in
Oh, not
community.
really. Absolutely not, because my entire studies was in Chennai, and that was very much we all spoke. I lived in the hostel, so we spoke Tamil. While my mother tongue is Malayalam, there is a lot of similarity.
Right.
I already had, even when I was in my hometown in Trivandrum, I did my graduation. I had a lot of good friends from the neighboring states, uh, in Tamil Nadu and all that. So we used to, even make fun in Tamil, all that. So I was pretty comfortable with the language. And as I moved into the career, I became a lot more better, especially with the union negotiations.
Correct. Right.
Yeah. You pick up that language so well. Right.
Yeah, because the language,
Yeah.
speaking the language in literal sense is the way to connect with people, and
Very true.
do
Very,
that
very
in your role. So
true.
I'm sure it must have been very important. Yeah. So speaking of the work that you did, you led HR at Amara Raja for about 20 years with
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
16,000 people and only 140 HR staff. So what forced you to build systems instead of headcount? Because a lot of times we look at it as a ratio of, oh, if you have these many number of people in the
Yeah.
company, you need to have X number of people in HR. But
True.
that skin, it really doesn't work. But you did manage to do that. So what was it that you did, differently, or how did you build these systems?
Mm. Thanks, Harish. That's a good question. But let me first correct the numbers slightly.
Sure. Yes.
At the time I left in January, mid January 2026, we were close to 21,000 employees, and I would say close to 200 HR team members.
Okay. Okay.
Roughly, there is, one HR person for about 100 people, 100 employees, which is fairly a typical good sector average that I would say. But the real point is that you would know, and I know you would have consciously asked this, that organizations don't scale through the HR headcount alone, right?
Right.
So, in my view, they scale when systems, culture, and leaders take ownership of people decisions. And that's when we that. And so, It was never really a question of systems versus headcount. I would say we built both. We would really built both. Early on, I would say we realized that if HR tried to solve every issue by simply adding more and more people into the HR team, uh, we will only look very reactive. So one of the key principles I remember we kept on conversing amongst us was that how do we be proactive? How do we, it's like how that famous proverb was saying, the customer really does not know what it wants. You know, if you were to look from, I'm not being arrogant here, but I was saying, if you can look up and, look ahead and then say as to what we should do before they could even ask for it. So from a business perspective, from a people perspective, you will have to look at systems that are coming in place proactively. Of course, there will always be demand and there will be certain, proportion of reactive things. But what's your proportion of reactive versus proactive? That's
Hmm.
important. Our focus was also about institutionalizing a lot of systems and processes, so that organization could function well without constantly the pit manager. And that was important. I would also say that at the same time, we kept on focusing a lot on building the organizational culture and a culture that was deeply rooted in values. And I would say strongly oriented on type of. I mean, those two were very, very, it has to go, and like I earlier about
Yeah.
fairness and firmness,
Right,
both.
right.
And I believe, Harish, when culture and systems reinforce each other, organizations become far more self-sustained, isn't it? So we also recognized that fact and started doing things in that manner. Beyond all this, HR by itself as a function was a collaborative system. So we had shared services, centers of expertise. These teams worked in close partnership with the business HR teams. So each business had their dedicated business HR team. The centralized shared services and the centralized COEs worked in partnership
Hmm.
so that business HR never felt alone. And beyond all this, they were not just strengthened by these two teams, but there was a strong Apex HR leadership forum, which we as the Human Resources Council, that which was meeting regularly to exchange insights and also shape what we called it as the next practice.
Hmm.
That's about being proactive. So
Right.
that was very, very simple, Harish. Build capable HR teams. More importantly, build an organization through those HR teams where strong systems, values, and leaders take responsibility for people decisions.
Hmm. Hmm.
The way we would have. So it's about taking both systems and competent people in your team, not just the count also.
Right. And I'm sure the business leaders also would have played a very big role in this whole thing.
Of course. In fact, you can't build systems in isolation. And I would say the very purpose was also to see that every line leader was also an HR leader, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I said, they shouldn't feel dependent on the HR team. How do you build that competence becomes extremely important.
Correct, correct. So I just wanted you to double click on that because this is leading people. A lot of
Mm.
times people just assume that I will do this.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
and you being a great individual contributor need not necessarily mean you are a great leader.
Of
There's
course.
something that you need to learn as well.
Yeah.
So how did you bridge that gap among your business leaders where
Mm.
you are essentially like they say, if since God could be everywhere, God made mothers. So it's like that. You can't be everywhere. So your managers have to do, majority of the heavy lifting for you in terms of taking care of the employee, whether it is delegation, coaching, leading, all of that, right? And the HR systems have to be like the ballast which takes care, the scaffolding which takes care and allows the leaders to really grow. If you think of it, it sounds great, works great in companies where it is working. But I think
True.
the challenge in companies where it is not working is that, the business leaders who are supposed to take care of the people part of the business on a day-to-day basis, uh, they are not able to do it. So how did you, make this transition happen in the case of Amara?
Yeah. See, one is, like you rightly said, God can't be everywhere. I mean, I'm not saying HR is equivalent to God, but taking that analogy, it's important, like I just previously mentioned, that every leader has to be an HR person by itself. How do you sort of run your teams? I don't think there is somebody like HR which has to come and say that this is the way you should, right? Uh, you know, and when finance comes and tells you this is the way you should run your business, nobody likes it, right? So same way, they don't want, I mean, but you will have to enable them without they knowing that you are actually teaching them, but you are actually enabling them. You are actually coaching them. So you coach leaders to be coaches. I mean, I would say that way. So how do we sort of help them understand? How do you do crucial conversations? How do you do performance review and check in, not necessarily on a quarterly, 6 monthly, or annual basis, but you do it in a manner that both sides really don't feel that it's a review, but it's an enabling, uplifting conversation. So these are things that we'll have to do and ensure that they feel very empowered. You'll have to constantly do that aspect about building that competence of people management within your line leaders, and that's and which an HR team that does that. And more importantly here, Harish, you can't just have a few senior HR people doing that. You need to have that capability across your system. Even the frontline shop floor HR executive should be able to do that conversation in a matured fashion with possibly a plant manager. And there the grades and the levels don't matter. So that capability is what. So continuously what we did is to build that capability within the HR team. We had several courses at various levels to ensure that the competence and that relevance of the HR executives stayed updated. Uh,
Mhm.
it's not just technical skills.
Right.
Always understand labor codes a lot more better by getting a consultant. But you can't have soft skills through a consultant to evolve it. And that development was very, very critical. So, the Amara Raja way, which was christened across the organization, was not just by HR, it was through leaders. So HR facilitated and created, I would say, institution building exercise.
Mhm. Right, right. Yeah. When you mentioned learning, it actually leads me to the next question. Amara's HR practices became IIM and Harvard case studies. So, what did you do that most HR leaders weren't willing to do? Because not a lot of your peers have been cited as case studies, but you have been. So, you obviously did something different. So, what do you think you were ready to do, which was different and which enabled this to happen?
Uh, Harish, I know, a good pointed question, but I wouldn't say that others didn't know. But I would say I also want to correct the fact that it was not case studies highlighting HR practices. Of course, it was definitely gratifying, that recognition of a case study and that too about HR within an organization enterprise was definitely gratifying. So what happened is the way that we were building the HR organization, and that was predominantly at that time we were building basis the Dave Ulrich model of, I mean, I briefly mentioned about the COEs, the shared services, supporting and partnering with the business HR teams. So that was how we were building the HR organization. That very way of how we were doing it, and also the way that we were building culture, that caught the attention of the academic community, I would say. So culture building was a huge focus early on in Amara Raja. And one thing that I had made it extremely clear that culture is not a software issue. It is a serious business lever. And that was sort of time and again created through a lot of conversations around values, leadership behavior, even when these conversations were uncomfortable. So you'll have to keep doing that. Another thing that we did was institutionalizing the practices, like I talked about systems, so institutionalizing practices rather than depending upon personalities. So be it performance systems, leadership development, or we had this LSIP, which is the large scale cultural alignment programs around the Amara Raja way. The effort was always to build something that would outlast individuals. And importantly, we involved a large number of leaders. No consultants came from outside and ran programs on culture. We facilitated and trained leaders and managers, and they were at the forefront. So if you look at the LSIP program that we did year on year, covering every other employee, was done by the senior leaders, the middle management, and all the entire management was involved in terms of creating the importance of living the Amara Raja way. And not just keeping everything centrally within HR. So that created, I would say, a real ownership, and all this got, this all got heard about by, I should say, Professor Vijayvargi's, sort of saw an interview of mine in an HR magazine. So he picked it up. He reached out to me, had that conversation. It went on pretty deep, and he said, "JK, I think we need to make this a case study." So kind of him, and I said, "Case study." He said, "Of course, we will have to do this." And that's he got deeper and asked a lot of questions with me, the teams, the founder chairman, the entire leadership. And that's how the first case study that happened, which was an IIM Ahmedabad case study of, done by Professor Vijayvargi. And we were fortunate that it went on to get listed in the Harvard Business Publishing. That was very gratifying. In the phase B, which was the second case study in continuation of the first part, that was also developed by same Professor Vijayvargi of IIM Ahmedabad. That again, Ish, was very gratifying, even that got listed. So for us, the lesson was pretty simple. I would say we were willing to do the slower, the more difficult work of building culture and systems, patient, rather than just looking for HR initiatives or solutions to say.
Right. Yeah, I think that sums it up very nicely because a lot of times culture ends up, it's nice when things are going great.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and,
I
when it is pressure,
very cool. Yes.
that's the true test of the culture
Very true.
because
Thank
that's
you.
when most
Listen,
of our values are forgotten and so-called business emergencies take over. Right. So that's why being patient and being in it for the long run, I think that's what matters and that's what makes a difference.
and that's real institution building, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So, in 35 years, where have you seen the gap between what leadership says and what the organization actually does? If there is that gap, where does it become really dangerous?
Harish, you just said about that a little bit ago. Yeah. My experience, Harish, I would say the most dangerous gap between what leaders say about values, okay, and how decisions are actually made in moments of pressure. That's the dangerous gap. What do you say and what you actually do in moments of pressure? So we all know every organization speaks about, say, integrity, respect, putting people first. All this we have fun
Yeah.
time. And the real test, actually, to me, is when there is a difficult decision, right? When performance pressure is high, when there is conflict or when something inconvenient needs to be really addressed. Now, that's where it really comes. So, if leaders speak about values but behave differently in those moments, I think people catch it up and notice so very quickly. And that's the gap. That gap, in my view, goes on to trust erosion, right? Easily.
Yeah.
And trust begins to erode. Whatever policies or communication or leadership great messaging that you do, I doubt it can repair.
Okay.
Not. I mean, it's very so over the years, I think I have learned that culture is not what organizations declare. Culture is what leaders consistently do, even business,
Right.
right? So the real responsibility of leadership is not just to articulate values. And I think it's more about living them visibly in your everyday decisions. That's critical. Great question, Harish. I love this question. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. So, made sometimes often seen as a controversial point of view, where
Hmm.
I've said that it is okay if, say, a founder says that, everyone has to work for 16 hours, 7 days of the week here. If that is what is happening, at least say that upfront so that whoever joins you knows that this is what they are signing up for. But don't say things just because they sound cool, and then what happens on the ground is completely different. So I've
Yeah,
always been saying that just stay true, stay consistent with what is happening, which
yeah,
does mean that maybe, they should have another opinion, or they should at least think about what is happening on the ground.
hmm,
And
true.
it's not been taken in the best of ways by some people. But I
Yeah,
said that's still better than, saying something just for the sake of it.
very true. Very true.
Yeah.
And I'll see the people. I mean, you can't be sitting at the top or as a leader anywhere and then assuming that people don't pick these things up. They will easily.
Right. Yeah. And like you said, once that trust erosion happens,
Hmm.
whatever policies that you
Yeah.
claim, whatever you say, it's just, it's eyewash. Nobody's going
Yes.
to really
Yes. Yes.
care about it. But I'm sure there must have been instances where, somebody messed up. Somebody, because of whatever pressure that they felt, they did something which was contrary to what they also may have thought of or what they said. Then
Mhm.
how do you come back from making a mistake?
I'm sorry. That's all. Correct. No, that's the biggest quality. I mean, let me tell you, Harish. When you when you apologize or when you say sorry, you're rewarding yourself. I tell you, I have experienced when I say apology, I get goosebumps. I get goosebumps for how I did have the courage to say that. It's difficult.
Yeah.
And now sometimes it becomes so difficult, but it is so rewarding. And say that. People will just fail and will not be able to say anything. When you really want to stand corrected, why not stand correct? So that's simple. Well, everybody, I mean, we're all humans and, we are bound to make mistakes. And only thing, don't make sorry an affair all the time. But, know, so you got to have that self-awareness. And if you recognize that you made it, please stand up and say that you stand correct.
Right, right. So I've also noticed this in Indian organizations where even though the founder or the CEO or the owner doesn't want it, they
Yeah.
almost end up having to, and I'm using the words very carefully, they almost end up having to suffer from the God complex. And I'll explain about that because so many people, and typically in these organizations, people would come from not so privileged backgrounds, and their lives have definitely been improved because of the opportunity that they have got and all of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when they come and keep reminding the founder or the CEO, managing director that, oh, everything in our life is all because of you. Uh, so that person is also human at the end of it, right? He or she keeps listening to this day in, day out that, oh, you are like a god, you have saved me, you have saved my family. That person is almost bound to get to this feeling that, oh, I am like the benevolent dictator for life of this company. It's very difficult for that person to stay grounded. So how do you sort of, make sure that this does not happen? Because a lot of the times the founder doesn't set out to become this, arrogant know-it-all. But if all that person is hearing day in, day out is this, sometimes maybe they just, you know, accidentally start, inadvertently start thinking like this. What is your take on this?
Harish, I agree. I mean, we will have to work with leaders constantly, even if you believe that they are humble, they are doing pretty well. Like Stephen Covey talked about sharpening the saw. I'm using
Right.
it in another perspective of saying that you are anyway powerful, you're humble, you're grounded, but keep nudging. Uh, More two things. One is about nudging them about reflection, nudging them about self awareness, and ensure that you don't fall flat for any of these where your egos are not, your egos are sort of elated, and that's where you fall trap for on. Right? I think people who recognize where they come from, uh, how was their journey, what are they after all, and keeping themselves grounded is important. So I think HR professionals, especially at the senior levels, first of all, they need to be very, very grounded, right? They need to be humble. They need to be doing a lot of self reflection, uh, and ensure that you create space and conversations within your leadership to see that they stand grounded all the time and not get carried away by what people say. It's natural. I mean, they themselves know that they would have done that in their lifetime, in their careers, about only talking the positives. Sometimes it's not about people trying to flatter you. It might be real. It will be true.
Correct.
They talk only the real ones. They're not, Saab, this is your problem. This is you're not doing. They're not going to say that. So you will have to ask for that first of all. How many leaders to ask for feedback? Are you facilitating leaders like Marshall Goldsmith said about feed forward? You know that. No, that helps you to sort of stay ground. You know, you have to brush off the flattery. So you'll have to create a space and a conversation that makes people stay ground. That is what I would feel. And
Yeah.
that's something that, that also helps yourself to also keep staying grounded and being humble.
Right. Yeah. 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 And I think that is one of the blockers that I feel, when it comes to the previous answer that you gave
Mm.
about just saying sorry when you know that you have,
Yeah.
messed up something.
Correct.
Sometimes they lead this, they're almost obliged not to say sorry because that means that they have erred. And,
Mm.
everyone is saying that you can never make a mistake. So how can I actually go and say sorry?
Yeah. And when you say sorry, especially amongst your teams, forget the peers and the leadership levels. They will come say, no, 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 don't say that. No. And you still have to say where you made the mistake and own it.
Great. Yeah. 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 I recently, was watching a clip of Sachin Tendulkar where he was talking about you know, a mistake that he made on field. He was run
Mm.
out by VS Lakshman. It
Mm.
was Lakshman's mistake, and Tendulkar reacted very angrily on the field.
Oh, okay.
And then he went back. And this is a known thing that he used to always discuss every dismissal with his elder brother, who was like his coach come advisor,
Mm.
including his last test when he knew that he's never going to bat again. Still, they discussed it. So his brother actually, asked him that you got out, but your reaction, was it helping Lakshman or was it actually making things worse for him?
Man,
So I said,
right.
yeah, I think I made a mistake. So then next day he actually went to Lakshman and he said, see, I got scolded because of you. He didn't say that to his younger brother. But the point Tendulkar was making was that you need somebody like this all the time who keeps you
Yeah,
grounded.
yeah,
Tendulkar is literally the god of cricket for many of us. So
yeah,
he's talking like that. I'm sure most of other business leaders that we come
yeah.
across, they should definitely be thinking about having this
True.
one person or somebody who keeps them grounded, who keeps questioning them. I think that's very important.
And that reminds me, it's never too late to go back and say, even if it had happened sometime, but your realization is later. Don't have to brush off. I have heard people saying, anyway, now it's gone. It's been not at all. You can still go back and say, and correct that hurt sometimes, which might be there within teams. Oh no. So you'll have to do that. And when you do that as a leader, you're also inspiring others to be so.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, the next question, I think conveniently what is happening is the answers that you are giving and the follow-up question that I'm asking are sort of segueing into the next question.
Sure. Sure.
So,
Right.
my next question was you said companies obsess over structure, targets, and strategy, but miss the human dynamics. So, what does that actually cost an organization? And, in the last 5 minutes, we've been talking about the human element. So,
Yeah.
and any more thoughts on this aspect? Any example that you can give me about, how missing the human dynamics costs an organization?
Harish, very, very true. In fact, we all know organizations. You also help organizations align on strategy and so on. We invest a lot of energy in terms of visioning, strategy building, uh, followed by that, you go on structure designing, organization design, and so on. All that is important. I'm not saying that is not. But what often gets missed out or underestimated are the human dynamics. We talked about trust, alignment. Alignment is your favorite subject. Ego, right? I would say, openly, blatantly to talk about it. And the quality of conversation amongst leaders, right? These dynamics are normally underestimated and not attended to. And that is where the cost will not be visible, or rather, it's rarely visible immediately, right? So, in paper, you will find everything looks perfectly designed. I have the vision, I have the strategy, I have the structure, but underneath there will be misalignment. What do you do? Have you sensed that? Have we looked upon that? Since you asked an example that suddenly comes to my thought process is, I've seen situations where two senior leaders, Harish, both of them believed because there was a collaborative goal. So both of them believed that they were responsible for driving that goal achievement. Okay. Now, what really happened is each started giving instructions in their own way that they believed was right to their own teams. And when teams have to collaborate, they were not necessarily, they are getting confused, right? What is that the leaders never did, the two of them? They never paused to see how can we align each other. What will you do? What will I do? That was not happening. And what happened? Structure looked very clear, but the coordination was missing amongst teams. Teams were getting mixed signals. And therefore, what happened? Something which could have been completed in 6 months in this case, Harish, went on dragging for almost 2 years. And 2 years completion happened only when that alignment went.
Right.
So this is what happens. Nothing was wrong in that case with the strategy, and the real issue was only the absence of alignment
Mm-hmm.
and that honest conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So that is why I often have kept saying that organizations don't struggle only because of strategy. I mean, there is enough talked about strategy and culture, but they struggle when human dynamics underneath the strategy are not consciously addressed, and that
Wha-
is sort you close eyes, and that's where you make the biggest mistake.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But it's like again that example, right? Or the joke that you say that the wife asks the husband, "What are you looking for?" He says, "I lost my car keys." Yes. Says, "Did you lose it in the hall?" If there's no there's light only in the hall. I lost it in the kitchen because because there's light here. So it's easy to look at strategy and find holes here. It's difficult to measure alignment. It's difficult to measure how people are comfortable with each other. So
Just
it's
like
because it's difficult to measure. They just leave it aside and they will see that we'll try to wing it. But
yeah,
then that's where companies get stuck. And like the example that you gave, it's only
yeah,
post facto then we will see that, oh, this could have been done in 6 months, but it has actually taken 2 years.
yeah. That's it.
So what do you see successful organizations doing, to address this?
I think don't see don't just your annual strategy planning exercises. Don't assume once you have evolved a good strategy, a robust one, that alone is enough. You'll have to then go and check for structure, which again is not so much check, whether there is a structure to deliver that strategy. That again, there is consulting that lot happens. The underneath aspect about ensuring that how the human dynamics are how are you deploying? You remember, Harish, we had that policy deployment and things like that. Now, clearly, there has to be alignment, and even there is a shared goal in this case, which I said, who does what. You will have to, you don't let go some of these things, saying that can be figured out. No,
Right.
that also has to be figured out. Not it will be figured out by people. You'll have to help, enable, and bring that clarity to the last mile.
Right.
And, that is important. Which is only when you will realize that there are human dimensions and that are being addressed.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's a very, very important.
Yeah.
Uh, People might think, no, no, we don't have the time for all that. And for what do you have time? I mean, if you don't go things completely of what needs to be done, then what's the point in approaching a strategy workshop and then saying that we have to become so and so by so and so time? Uh, You'll have to look at the underneath aspect and address those proactive.
Right. Yeah. 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 So, we work with a lot of these PE firms, operating partners, sometimes, companies which are getting into an M&A kind of a thing. It's all, looking at spreadsheets. It's great. Right? I keep saying spreadsheet, Excel sheet is great too. The best
Yeah,
tool
it's
for
fine.
writing, not
Yeah,
word.
yeah,
Well, we
yeah,
can just, drag the formula. But
right.
what is happening with people, that's where your strategy is going to get unstuck.
True.
So, you advise promoter families on governance and the human dynamics of family enterprises. So, what's the dilemma that almost every promoter family faces, but rarely names or rarely admits it? What is the dilemma that promoter families get stuck with?
Sure. So, Harish, the real dilemma actually is not about governance structures or about the family constitution or the family office. Those can be designed. I mean, the softer aspect, which is what people like me really work on, uh, and the deeper challenge, I would say that is the maturity required to have honest conversations without straining relationships. You know, that's exactly the deeper challenge, I would say. So, We all know family businesses, sit at the intersection of two powerful systems, family and enterprise.
Right.
So when it comes to decisions about roles I'm saying roles of the promoter family members, their succession, their, what do you say, accountability. Who does what, who's accountable for what, or ownership aspects. These are things that inevitably touch emotions and relationships.
Mhm.
So the truth is that not everyone in a family may naturally have that comfort or a maturity to engage in such difficult conversations.
Mhm.
But over time, families have to consciously, I would say, cultivate that ability. And when you cultivate that ability with sensitivity within your family, just imagine what a great business leader also you become with your
Mhm.
own professional peaks. An ability to speak openly, uh, listen carefully, uh, providing the presence, uh, ability to separate the need of business from the personal sensitivities. Now, so when families can work on this or are able to develop that maturity, I think governance becomes far more uh, easier, simpler than the rules on the paper, right? It becomes a sort of shared commitment to both family harmony and business control.
Right.
That I would put it.
Okay. So is there a recipe to get families started on this? For example, maybe just
Yeah.
to, give you an example, is it about, say, starting with self-awareness? What do you think are your strengths and, trying to understand your space in the, larger organization? Where does it start from?
I would still here use the principle of being proactive. Every family has to be proactive in terms of taking initiatives to ensure harmony. When I say harmony, it's not to compromise these relationships. Just because dad is dad and son is son, I will stay harmony by accepting whatever he does. No.
Mhm.
Point is the son able to have that honest conversation when dad makes a mistake and vice versa. When the
Okay.
vice versa is easier, that
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily happen. That is so it's important to create that climate. How do you create that climate? You should meet often. Why do I meet often when I have no agenda? Precisely. You know, yeah, and we might wonder, you would think of families that live together. There was a way on, forget they are not even business families also. What does it end up to? That it ends up to a certain amount of give and take. It creates transparency. It creates a commitment to be transparent, to follow certain norms, to be fair to each other, so on and so forth. So all this happens through a regular cadence that needs to be there by every family. Don't think that you will only call the family advisor when we have issues. No,
Mhm.
the family advisor comes in at a certain cadence. You discuss things. Family advisor will not have any role to play as long as the conversations goes. It is only for once in a while to step in and say if somebody is stepping out box of the norms that we agree as a family.
Mhm.
So facilitate that, and that's how you become proactive. And when you do that cadence in a religious way, there hardly would be issues that are underneath, you know, and there won't be any undercurrents. Every current is visible, every current will be dealt with. So that is what a family should do proactively, and that's exactly what I work with families. While there is the other aspect about a family office, wealth creation, which there are experts who can come in and do that aspect. Don't do this one properly. All that will not take off well.
Right.
In paper.
Mhm.
That's important. So many families venture into creating constitutions, which is what is required. Great step forward.
Mm.
Constitution. That process is important.
Mm.
Otherwise, there will be things in the constitution, but you follow something else in action and work.
It's the same thing, Seru gap that you're talking about.
So that is the proactive measure that I would say that all families should take, however small they are. In fact, that is the right stage. You know, sometimes families become bigger than the businesses. They they start becoming bigger than the businesses, and therefore the number of family members increase. Business becomes very critical. So, are you creating? Is this? Are you staying together as a family for the business, or the business is staying for the family? What are you?
Right.
No, these are questions that needs to be answered. And if there is this proactiveness within families, I think family harmony exists and it leads to a long way in terms of perpetuity.
Right. On this point, have you done any kind of an analysis or study of Indian family businesses as compared to, say, Germany, where these
Yeah.
SMEs are very big, or in Japan, where you have businesses running for over 1,000 years? So, is
Yes.
there any difference businesses in other countries and how Indian family businesses are being run?
See, actually, I did my family business advisory certification from the Family Firm Institute in the US. And of course, as part of the study, there were several researches that I had gone through and studied. And relatively, Asia does well. And family businesses actually end up doing relatively much better. Asia does pretty well. I mean, for that matter, be it India, Japan, and all that. There are families which are several hundred years old
Correct.
that do exist. And some of the learnings that you can take from them is the crux of it is about ensuring that they live their values they had articulated, and not that the values are cast in stone forever. No, if you think a time change has happened and a generational change happened, and you want to revisit the values, and the ability to do that should also be there. That itself is a value, and then they change and they go by the times. Not that they're compromising, they're advancing themselves better. So that all leads to perpetuity. So there is tremendous amount of research, very interesting researches that are there in terms of how families operate. And I have this strong belief, and that's the reality, that family businesses outperform non-family businesses.
Okay, interesting. I was actually reading a tweet just before our conversation today, where
Yeah.
that person was talking about how family businesses, which have done well in traditional industries, now with the next generation, typically studied abroad, come back, and they want to go into these newer industries, and they sort of
Yeah.
sell
Yeah.
off their traditional things and now go into this, all the things that we just talked about, right? Set up a family office, go invest in some startups.
Mhm.
And now with the markets going down, suddenly they're like not sure what is happening. And they have sort of destroyed their foundation, because what enabled them for the last 80, 100 years, suddenly they're trying to change it for the sake of changing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting for me to, just read that tweet half an hour ago and now listening to you. Uh, it's interesting.
That's a very dangerous phenomenon, of what you said very subtly in the passing, changing for the sake of changing. Uh, Changes are required, and it has to be facilitated. But that doesn't mean you change for the sake of change.
Right.
Right. Good. Yes, thanks, Harish.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So coming to, the closing part of our conversation, but I'm not going to let you go without talking about Project Act Plus, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, so tell us about what does the ACT stand for, and how does that pan out for you? How does your week look like? So first, please explain what ACT stands for.
Yeah, thanks, Harish. I have written about it in LinkedIn. That's a very close, dear project of mine, which has been there possibly from mid 30s. Not so much to say that that Act Plus was coined, but the very phenomena of I wanting to get out of uh, a full-time executive role to doing a portfolio of things. That was
Mm.
my dream all the and touch wood, I'm in that reality today. you know, Nice that you asked about it. So, ACT is not necessarily, it's not a firm or it's not a platform or anything, but it's a dream. Yeah, that's why I called it project. So each of those alphabets in ACT and plus has a meaning to that. There is a meaning making. It has more than one meaning, each of them. That's why I also put the plus aspect in it. So A is advisory in terms of advising enterprises, organizations, in terms of how they could vision it out, how they can strategize. Of course, on the people side of it, the culture side of it, those are areas. Needless to mention, we talked about family businesses advisory. That's a niche that I am very much keen and interested in. That's very something very passionate about. Then it's about A is alma mater, which is, I want to go back and, sort of pay forward to the institutions that shaped me up.
Mhm.
Uh, Necessarily only the last one of Madras School of Social Work, that is definitely there. There is at least clear plans for what I want to do and what they would like me to do. So that's there. A is also the interesting part, it's about acting, something that I left long ago and I want to restart it again. I used to do acting possibly from third standard or fourth standard when my dad he taught me how to do mono acting, and it
Mhm.
sort of got me, and then that's how I went into theater and things. So that almost till around the age of 24, 25, I did that. But then later, people felt I'm not too serious. You're playing dramas and walking around. So then I sort of controlled that, I should say. I sort of sacrificed it, I should say. I want
Mm.
to go back and do that. So that's about reliving that the old passion that I have. C has again different meanings. C is coaching for sure. C is community work that I want to do beyond the alma mater that I said. There is this whole desire about social causes and especially some niche areas which I want to really work on. I will talk about it. Then the C aspect is also about consulting in some ways or other. Not so much to get to operational aspect too much, but to, possibly diagnostics, helping the organization understand how they can sort of perform and make their vision happen and so on and so forth. T is teaching, training, traveling. If I were to say that. Teaching again, I'm not looking at the top tier institutes. I'm really actually looking at helping not again teach a full-fledged curriculum, teach at tier 3, tier 4 institutions. That's something that I really traveling again, not just as leisure, but there's a lot to learn from pulling curiosity and things like that, needless to mention. So those are things that I really want to sort of do in that class. Of course, soon I am putting this together. In fact, in that LinkedIn also, I did say that I will soon come back and see how that structure will be made to make all this portfolio of roles come into life.
Mhm. Yeah.
So if you ask me, it's all shaping up very well, Harish. Thanks for asking that. Not that I intend to do all of these every week, not at all. Plus is not about filling a color. It was about living across these spaces thoughtfully. That's what it is. That brings a lot of joy. So I am bringing together that small platform through which all these engagements can be practiced and brought to action more meaningfully.
Right. When you were describing this, a thought just struck me that we keep talking about bringing your whole self to work. People have multitudes, everyone has different interests and passions, which need not necessarily be very closely tied to work. but attributes or qualities that they pick up from other things that they do, which a lot of times unknowingly are put to good use at work. For example, your acting, skills probably, help you connect with humans because that, basic things that you
Oh,
need,
yeah.
uh, learn when you are acting. You just empathize with a specific role and what that character must be going through, right?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is why probably you've been so good with bringing in the human dynamics into all the
Oh,
work.
and that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that's even though you sacrifice it, you stopped acting. Maybe all the skills that you developed by the age of 24 help you, see through the
Yeah.
last 35 years.
True. True. Very true. I mean, it definitely helps. It it has its own impact in professional life for sure, Harish. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. 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 But a lot of times we end up overlooking it, or we don't give it the due importance.
Yeah.
Big organizations and individuals themselves should make sure that they have space for all the things that you know
True.
that
Very true.
matter.
Yeah. 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 In fact, acting, when you were saying that, I was just thinking acting teaches you very quickly that words are only one part of communication, right?
Mm.
We all say about that. So what is below that? The very pauses, right? The tone,
Right.
the hesitation, even the silence. It often reveals much more than the spoken sentence.
Yeah.
Acting brings that to life, right?
Correct.
The In fact, you know, a lot of things come to examples in life that really comes, uh, just one thought that came. I remember when I was doing this presentation. I'm also thinking, Harish, that it should not be self-congratulatory, but to tell you, when we're making this presentation and everybody in the room, it was a very important decision making. And very everybody in the room, I would say, was pretty nodding, and things appear to be moving forward, Harish.
Mm.
And there was one leader on the table was who I sort of noticed was unusually quiet. Why I say unusually quiet is he is a person who normally speaks up, asks questions, sometimes even challenges very constructively, and we all believe that constructive rebellion is very good. So that unusual silence there was some discomfort in me. That contrast, made me pause. So there was temptation of moving on, time, but this is an important one. So I sort of paused and invited him to sort of share what was his thinking. And I remember he initially stated, no, 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 maybe he was also wanting to. But when I sort of little pushed and said, no, what is it? He spoke and he raised a concern that, considering the sensitivity, I'll say that none of us had actually considered. And that led us to rethink on an important part of the decision. Just imagine if he had just simply listened and went through the flow or assumed there was alignment. Listening beneath that silence or that words, I think helped surface a perspective that none of us have actually thought about in that.
Right. Yeah.
So I think leadership conversations are not very different from acting. Look, in many times, I think leadership conversations, sort of unearth not what just people say, but what they may be feeling or what they might be thinking, and maybe they have not yet found the space to express.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Space or language sometimes.
So that's what it is, I would say. So I think you are right. Thanks for asking that. It touched a chord.
Yes. Glad it did.
Yeah.
So, couple of questions now. So, if you go back and give Amara Raja's board one piece of advice they did not take, what would it be?
That's a thoughtful question, but I would hesitate to frame it as an advice, Harish, because you know, because I think all the boards at Amara Raja Group was always open to dialogue. So I say that with very, very deep respect.
Mm-hmm.
Even today, I remain associated with the promoter family as an advisor, as a director on the board of the Rajana Foundation, so on and so forth. But truly, if you ask me if I reflected honestly, the area where I sometimes feel, we could have moved earlier, uh, is the deeper and more structured preparation of the next generation of leaders across the organization.
Hmm.
Across the organization. In fact, that is something that I've also mentioned very clearly in my transition note, and I've shared it with my promoters and the successor as well. But when I say that, I also should say it is also my responsibility, and it is not just sitting with the board. As the group CHRO, that was equally my responsibility to keep pushing and shaping that agenda. So, leadership development and succession readiness, Harish, requires very, very long horizons. So, organizations typically end up focusing on current performance, immediate priorities. But if you look at the pipeline of future leaders, that building process needs continuous attention. So, like I earlier talked about, you know, these are the underneath aspects. Otherwise, suddenly it will hit you. So, look back, one lesson stands out for me. Preparing the next generation of leaders should begin much earlier than what we usually any organization.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very great pointed advice. You spent 35 years building other people's cultures, right?
Yeah.
So, what does JK's own culture look like? What are the values that you actually live, not just espouse?
Nice. I, 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 I would hesitate that I've perfectly lived all the values, but that I normally speak about. But, like all people, I'm still learning, Harish, and I should be honest about that. But when I reflect about this, I think a few things that anchors my life. The first one is authenticity. You know, uh, trying to remain truthful to what I believe, and even when it is inconvenient. So, some people say I use this word so much, which is nothing but the courage of conviction. Having the courage of conviction and acting that way is a very core value. That is something that I wouldn't want to let go. That's a core value. The second one I would clearly say is respect for people. Over the years, Harish, I should say I have learned that every individual carries a story, right? And leadership actually begins by recognizing the dignity in that. So that's respect. The third thing I would say is about caring and uplifting others. I have always sort of felt that if our work or say our presence can actually help someone grow in confidence or clarity or a possibility, Harish, just imagine that's so deeply meaningful, right? So that's very touching. And of course, One thing, in fact, it is there on my DP also, which is about continuous learning. That's also important. It's not just for staying relevant. Curiosity keeps us alive. Whether we are learning from organizations or we are learning from people, maybe from youngsters or life experiences outside work, right? So these are, I would say the top three, four things that I would think. Don't claim to live all this perfectly, Harish. But these are values I try to return again and again. That's something that. So, in this new chapter of my journey, where I'm evolving and it's on that journey, even if I can help a few organizations and individuals move from reflection to responsible action, I think I would find that deep meaning.
Right. Yeah. So I will tell you something that we've had, very few pointed but very deep interactions.
Right.
I haven't really worked with you in the organization or anything like that. But if somebody had asked me to describe you or, what is JK like, the description wouldn't have been too far from what you just, told.
Okay.
So for me, there is no things to gap here.
Okay.
What you're saying and what you are, who you are, I think is very much in line. Like you said, of course, you're always a work in progress. So I'm sure that there may be
That's
areas that you want to go deeper into, be more of something. But I can vouch for the fact that yeah, there is no Sedu gap here.
right. Thank you. There will always be, but you have to consciously be aware and keep bridging, keep learning. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Harish.
So yeah. So we'll bring this to an end. But before I let you go, I'm going to ask you for some hot take, rapid fire kind of questions.
Sure.
So one personal ritual outside work that makes you a sharper coach or advisor.
Reflection.
Yeah.
In the sense, I like this famous quote of Swami Vivekananda. I won't say, I don't promote the exact words, but what it means, do not let go of talking to that one person daily, the most intelligent person in your life, which is you.
Correct.
So, reflection to me is having that meeting with myself. It sort of sharpens both clarity and empathy, Harish.
Yeah. Okay. Great. What's something you've unlearned recently about what it actually takes to change an organization's culture?
Unlearn. Cultural alignment programs, all of those are very, very important. But I would say culture ultimately changes through everyday leadership.
Mhm.
That's something that I would say have come to more realization.
Okay. Okay. One book that's shaped how you think about people and leadership.
People who have worked with me closely will get fed up when I say this. But definitely all still continues to be my top book is Marshall's What Got You Here Will Not Get You
Not
There.
take you there.
Now, more importantly, it sort of reminds me that leadership growth, is often about letting go of behaviors that limit others.
Mhm.
It's a very powerful learning from that book. And, that feed forward and all that.
Right. Yeah. Which overused phrase in HR and culture work would you banish forever?
People are our greatest asset. When it's only a slogan that irritates.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Very,
Yeah.
very nicely put. Okay. Last question. You get a billboard in every corporate park and business district in India for 24 hours. What's the most honest thing you could say about organization culture in under 7 words?
That means I get a billboard which I can make use of and I can put 7 words there.
Yes, for 24 hours. That's it.
Okay.
So it has to be very high value, high impact.
Culture is what leaders repeatedly do.
Okay. Perfect. On that note, okay, brilliant conversation as always, JK.
Lovely questions, Harish.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
thanks a lot. Like I said, the idea of this conversation is to go pick the brains of the guest, and this is like a personal masterclass for me. So thanks a lot for indulging me with very frank, honest answers to all the questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Harish. I think this is one of the beautiful podcasts that I've had. It made me also reflect as we were going, and I think that is still the spark within me to reflect a little more after this conversation. Thanks so much for kindling that. Thank you for that nudge.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Harish.